Well, I think we're live somewhere. I just have to fix the Instagram now. So let me bring it up. All right. Amazing. Scarlett Lewis of the Choose Love Movement, who is one of my most dearest sunflowers in my life, and a icon in this space, and a champion of hope around the world and love. And today is the International Day of Hope, so I just wanted to jump on and say hello to everyone, and just how much I appreciate and love you, and talk to Scarlett a bit. We have been, soul sisters for many years, on the journey of love and hope and compassion. Hi, Guard. So I just wanted to, jump on and have a conversation about hope, because for those that don't know, today is the International Day of Hope. It was a day recognized by the United Nations. Last year was the first official day. This is our second year. And I've studied hope for a long time, and it comes from a place near and dear to my heart. So I just wanted to have a conversation about hope as we kick off this day, and why it's important. And have a conversation with one of my best friends in the world, and sunflowers, Scarlett. So thanks for joining today, Scarlett. Love you so much and appreciate you. And you've been such an important part of my journey on hope. So I appreciate that.
I got up when you asked me to do this. I thought, wow, I'm thinking of gratitude, and good morning, everybody. I have my coffee here with my thankful mug. And I thought, wow, I get to do this live with Catherine, my dear friend, who runs an organization called Shine Hope, which is so near and dear to your heart. I know that you're going to share the story, and also the day that you've worked so hard to create, the International Day of Hope. And you're going to share with us why it is so vitally important to every individual listening here. Look, hope is the key to a happy and successful life. And it's a skill. You can practice it. It's a choice, which is so awesome. You have this incredible matrix, Catherine, that I am a huge fan of. And so, I just want to share this with the world, because it is so important. In fact, it's so important that it's a matter of life and death. And so, we are on here today honoring everyone who's out there that is celebrating hope today, because they are so hopeful. And we're also talking to those of you who feel hopeless, who feel like you don't have hope. We are honoring you as well. And please listen up, because what Catherine is about to share can not only change your life, but it can save it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Scarlett. I have a company, the Shine Hope Company, and I also have a nonprofit, and the nonprofit really runs this global day, and has advocated for a long time. Of course, the United Nations has their own celebration. Celebration. I'm a representative at the UN for the World Federation for Mental Health, and we focus on October 10th every year, World Mental Health Day. But through my nonprofit, I've spoken at the UN several times, and the nonprofit is the International Foundation for Research and Education. It was initially depression, and that's a really big part of the story and journey to hope. I initially set out to rebrand mental health, rebrand depression, understand depression, because I lost my father to suicide. I had my own attempt in my 20s, and I was told, depression was the problem. And so I set out to rebrand mental health. I thought mental health had a branding issue. Stigma was really a negative brand, a lack of information, a negative perception.
Still is.
And
still is.
Yeah,
just
still is. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, good point, Scarlett. And what I found astounds me to this day, because I haven't been able to get the message out in the way that I need to, and I'm still trying to figure out why. What is not going correct in my messaging. But what I found is that hopelessness was the single consistent predictor of suicide. And I had, again, my own attempt in my 20s, and it was a moment in time. I wasn't in a major depressive episode. And so, I did literature reviews. I had another product line, did the first cause marketing campaign for mental health in the US nationwide with a product line in Lowe's Home Improvements. And, so I started, they were teaching me suicide prevention at the time was restricting access to means and locking up your guns, your medications, and then calling 800 numbers, which are super important in time of crisis. But to prevent something, you have to understand the root cause. And, so I got into literature reviews. I'm, a researcher by trade, like just by nature. And very obsessive. So I got obsessed with answering this question for myself to keep myself here. And hopelessness came up as the single consistent predictor. And what I learned is hopelessness is when your emotional despair collides with your sense of helplessness. So I feel sad, angry, afraid. Like those are the three basic negative emotions: sadness, anger, fear. And it collides with a sense of helplessness. I can't do anything about it. And that's what makes up a moment of hopelessness. And a moment of hopelessness is a moment in time. And when it becomes persistent, it becomes clinical anxiety or depression, or when it's unmanagement, it turns to addiction. If we're not managing our anger, sadness, fear, we're turning to substances, or we become violent as a way to manage that. And when we get stuck in our cycles of helplessness without identifying it, it becomes persistent hopelessness. So I was like, well, why, if hopelessness is the primary symptom of depression, and depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, it's the greatest cost to the workforce, why aren't we teaching people how to manage this symptom so it doesn't become a diagnosis or violence or self-harm or addiction? So I've set out on a mission. They were measuring hope, but they weren't teaching you how to be hopeful. And so I set out to figure out how to do that over 15 years ago. And I was able to prove out my theory that you could teach hope as a skill through a class teaching kids in school. We had started with a 12-week program. We taught it as a skill, and we measured hope pre and post intervention with a control group. And then we also looked at things like anxiety and depression and confidence and, all of these things. And it was amazing. We were able to show you could increase hope through just teaching. And as we increase hope, symptoms of anxiety and depression decrease. So I set out on a mission to ensure all know how to hope. And I rebranded the nonprofit to the International Foundation for Research and Education on Hope. I just crossed out depression because I think the journey to figure out to where I got to hope is super important in the process. So, and worked hard to advocate for an International Day of Hope, just published some new research. Like if you look at hope is the belief the future can be better than today and that I and we have the power to make it so. If you don't have hope, where are we going just as individuals or collectively as the world? So I'm super grateful this day has passed. And to me, it's a day that we can all start understanding that you can measure hope and you can teach it as a skill, So that's where we are today, and just working to elevate that conversation of hope science, taking it out of a wish or out of simply a perspective from religion and incorporating, spiritual practices with biology and like how we hope. Like when you are dealt with the most significant, heart-wrenching challenge ever, how do you get to hope? And that's, it's a skill and it can be learned. I'm not saying it's easy, but we can always get to hope. We just have to first be given the skills and taught how to. So that's where we ended up to where we are today. And it's awesome because a week from tomorrow, I'm celebrating 22 years of recovery.
Woo! Amazing accomplishment. Wow.
And hope has been, learning how to hope for myself has been key to that. And then teaching others, teaching kids in the world. Now we have city activations, and this International Day of Hope is key to, continuing to work in my recovery towards self and towards wholeness. So that's the story of how we got here.
Hope is for mental health. Hope is for recovery from addiction. And hope is also for it's this, and I've heard you say this is why I'm repeating what you say, the single most consistent factor in violence as well. And
Yeah.
so, considering what's going on in our world, this is really important.
Yeah. And loneliness and yeah, I mean, and you think about violence, like, with our youth program, it's anger. We feel anger, and anger is normal. And I ran from my anger. But if we're not managing our anger in healthy ways and that stress response, and we get triggered and we have that adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, we do really things that aren't in our best interest. But it's from a reactivity place when we're in our downstairs brain. And if we don't teach people what that downstairs brain is and what it does to our ability to think and how to self-regulate and how to get back to hope, we can't expect people to change their violent ways. We have to teach them how to regulate that stress response. And prayer is a great intervention from that. But you first have to understand what happens to the biology of our body, to what is going on to our physiology when that happens, because you can't just think your way through that stress response, because you've actually, when you're triggered, limited your ability to access the frontal lobe, which is where we can make healthy decisions. So the first thing is to learn how to identify when it starts happening and how to intervene in that. So it's really important. What's that?
Self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, where I'm not perfect today. Like, I'm triggered a lot, but it's about managing it and working every day to become more conscious, to make those moments of unconsciousness conscious and be proactive about, it's still like, I'm still triggered. I'm trying to do better every day at self-awareness around it and how I manage those triggers, and don't harm myself and other people in the process, and don't pick up substances as a way to regulate my fear, don't let my sadness turn into this like clinical depression, or, so it's about constantly becoming aware of how we hope. So yeah, it's really important. I want the conversation of hopelessness normalized, because we're all experiencing moments all the time. We're just unconscious of it. People think it's some disease or some diagnosis or something's wrong with you. But, we can't control other people. So if someone does something and it triggers a moment of sadness or fear or anger and that sense of helplessness, like, that's just a normal moment. But how do we manage that moment in a way that's healthier, that doesn't drive us deeper towards our despair or towards our sense of helplessness? So it's just about, moving on that matrix every day and constantly working to get towards hope. I mean, it's, really challenging things happen to us, and we live in systems that can be, oppressive. And it's not to say forget the systems. It's to, again, learn about where your power is in that system, and where is our power to manage our emotional responses to it, so that we don't, create worse situations for ourselves. Viktor Frankl was, I studied a lot of people that dealt with really challenging things. And I'm like, how did they navigate their way through back to hope? Because that is what I wanted to understand. And so, I looked into research and individual stories and skills and strategies people use. And he says, the space between the stimulus and response, like, that's your power. That is where your power is, And so learning how to access that. But again, it's awareness. And the International Day of Hope gives us the opportunity to become aware that hope is measurable, that it's something we can work on, that it's something we have power over, and hopelessness is normal. And if you grow up in poverty or in systems that are oppressive, of course, hopelessness is going to be your standard, like, you're just kind of how you see everything. But, once you learn how to hope, and once you learn how to manage that despair and get out of your helplessness into action, into where your power is, that's kind of how you create change. So I'm just excited to share what we know about hope science with the world. And I'm plugging my computer in. So tell me more about what interests you. Tell me your story, Scarlett, a little bit, and our listeners. I mean, obviously I know, and just how you see hope relate to love, and why you think hope is important.
I think it's really important for everybody to understand that hopelessness impacts everyone, that it's a normal thing. We all get angry, we all get triggered, and we all have moments of hopelessness. So this impacts everyone. and it's also accessible to everyone. Everyone that's listening can have hope, and therefore a moments of joy. That's what it leads towards, and so it's accessible to everybody. And I'm going to flip it back to you, Catherine, after I share my story, for you to maybe give everyone a glimpse into the Hope Matrix, and anybody that's listening and they're feeling hope, some hopelessness today, what they can actually do. But I'll tell you why I'm so excited about this, and 100% supportive of you and the Shine Hope Company, and wanting to celebrate the International Day of Hope that I have watched you work so hard for. And I'm so proud of your efforts, because it really is it's a purpose that you have on earth, and based on your own experience. So you are a lived experience expert, but you also just authored a paper. I mean, you are legitimately a researcher. You've written books. You know what you're talking about. But in my own case, my 6-year-old son, Jesse Lewis, was murdered in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School, alongside 19 of his first grade classmates and 6 educators, in what is still the worst mass shooting in an elementary school in the US. And, after that, it was interesting to me, Catherine, and the thing that really bothered me, other than, my son's murder, was the fact that there was no motive. There was no motive that they knew of. And so, for me, 13 years ago, I'm quitting my job. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to figuring this out, to figuring out a solution. We shouldn't be sending our kids to school and having them be murdered. One parent said she feels like she's playing Russian roulette when she sends her kids to school. And I know that parents who are listening, they have that understanding and that sense in the back of their heads. And we don't have to have that. So that's what really, really bothered me. No motive. If you start reading news articles on school shootings, and unfortunately, you will be given the opportunity, more often than not, there is no motive. And for me, I thought, how can we solve it if we don't know why it's happening? And so, Catherine, really, you've given us the motive, and it's hopelessness. And when we have an idea of what it is, then we can work to solve it, because there is a solution, which is everyone listening should just have their minds exploding, because there is a solution. And Catherine has it in her Hope Matrix, and it's really, really important. So I'm gonna, and by the way, not just for the life of victims like my son, but it's also so important for the life of perpetrators, for those young adults and even adults that are out there right now feeling so helpless and hopeless that they pick up a gun and kill themselves, or a rope, or whatever mechanism they choose, and they foist their pain off on other people, and they kill other people. So, like, even if you aren't hopeless, even if you've got a great family, supportive, you're united, you want other people to have this information, and probably somebody that could use this information, or use your own social media as a platform to help spread this information, and ask people who are listening to pass it on. This is life-saving information. It is school safety information. It is recovery information. Like, we want this throughout our society. So not only, and we're asking this, please, because it's the International Day of Hope, we want this message to get out. Even if you're fine, it behooves you and your personal health, safety, and well-being to get this message out there to others who are struggling. I always say there are only 2 kinds of people: good people like you and I, the people that are listening on a Sunday morning. Thank you for joining. But there are also good people in pain. And that's a positive statement. It's a hopeful statement, because there's always something that we can do. So please share this with the person that you know that needs it, or share it far and wide on your social media and ask for it to be shared. This information needs to get out there. And so I'm going to flip it back to you, Catherine, to talk a little bit to those people out there that are being forwarded this, that are in a state of hopelessness, that really don't know what to do. What would you
I mean, and it's so important. Like, this isn't just for the hope. Like, hope predicts all outcomes in our life. It predicts if we graduate from school, higher hope, our GPA more so than intelligence. Hope predicts our athletic performance often more than our abilities. I mean, hope is, impacts everything. So it's not just for people that are experiencing moments of hopelessness, which Scarlett mentioned is, by the way, everyone. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to develop clinical anxiety or depression, but do you know how to teach about what hopelessness is and how to get to hope? Like, that's why it is for everyone, because we're not teaching these skills. And the CDC did a study. Over half of our teen girls in the US alone identify with persistent hopelessness. And guess who's teaching this to them? Everyone. We all are. And if you don't know what a moment of hopelessness, which my guess is
you said we're teaching hopelessness. Is that what you're
yes.
saying? But how are we doing that?
Well, you look at social media.
You don't want to be doing that. You know what I mean?
No. Well, we don't, but you look at 24/7 news cycles. I mean, that trains your brain to hopelessness. You feel sad, angry, afraid, and a sense of helplessness, because much of what you're seeing is not, you can't control anything.
What bleeds social media, leads, right? What bleeds leads.
Absolutely. And it's not, yes. And, so hopelessness is learned, and you can teach hope. And so to me, we want everyone equipped with skills. Hopelessness, again, doesn't mean a diagnosis. It doesn't mean a disease. It doesn't mean you're going to develop clinical anxiety. It's when it becomes persistent. And when you look at hopelessness is the belief the future won't be better, and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's why we turn to extreme measures. And so it's about teaching that hope is a skill. It can be learned. And, Scarlett, I think, the amount of despair you felt when you lost your son, sadness, anger, fear, you could have easily stayed in that helplessness. And those two combined, that's what hopelessness is, right? Despair combined with our sense of helplessness. And we need to learn to manage sadness, anger, fear in healthier ways, so that we don't turn then ourselves to self-harm or to violence, to get back, retaliation, and stay in that state of helplessness. I have no power. I can't do anything about that. Because when we stay stuck in that cycle of hopelessness, that's when it becomes harmful to ourselves and other people. But you turn your greatest pain, which is what I wish we were teaching all of our youth to do. Mm-hmm. Sadness is not a disease. Anger is not a disease. Fear is not a disease. It can become a clinical diagnosis if it's not managed in a healthy way, but we all have this. Kids are learning, I have fear, so I have an anxiety disorder, and that's becoming cool. Well, it's not cool when you become identified with that disorder, because it keeps you stuck in that state of helplessness. I'm powerless to do anything about it. So it's about normalizing our emotional experiences, and some are incredibly more intense than others. Understandably so, but what do we do with those intense emotional experiences? And then again, how do we get out of helplessness and into action? And how do we ensure every child in our world has at least one person that believes in them? Because that is a key predictor of how well they'll do in their life. And when you look at extreme cases of shooter, like, do they have that one person that believes in them? I mean, our belief in our children are often more predictive of their outcomes than their belief in themselves. And are we teaching our kids that it's normal to feel sadness, anger, fear? We just don't want to internalize that or create destructive behaviors from it. And can they get out of helplessness into our action? Or are we teaching them that they do have power, or are we teaching them to, stay stuck in those cycles of hopelessness? So to me, it's just so important that everyone learns this. It's not for extreme cases, it's for everyone. But if everyone learns it as empowered with skills to teach and to normalize hopelessness and teach skills to get to hope, then we can reach the entire population with a common language and framework, because it's so important. And we want to reach all the extreme cases and we want to reach the normal cases. But I would challenge everyone, if we've got over half of our teen girls and over 40% of our youth in persistent hopelessness, we all need to learn these skills. Like, there is no one that doesn't need to learn, because everyone has the power to teach them. And that's why individuals need to learn this. It's not someone that's sick, or it's not for other people. It is for everyone. It's for everyone listening. I want everyone empowered so that they can touch our youth and touch future generations, for that we can create a better future, and that we have the power to make it so. Because if we don't have that, what do we have? So thank you for talking to me. Obviously, I'm so passionate about it, but I learned how to be hopeless. I learned to stay in my persistent hopelessness, and that did me no good, and it didn't do anyone else anyone good. And I just, I so want people to be empowered with skills to hope, so that if they get diagnosed with something, or if they get diagnosed with a disease, or if they go through a breakup, or if they get a fail at a test, that they don't internalize that failure, and they learn that they can have skills to move back towards hope. It's not easy, yet it is always possible. So that's my wish for this day.
Yeah, and I will share how I used hope skills following the murder of my son. I have faith, so I relied a lot on my faith. I prayed a lot. I looked for God winks, which were there. Instances where I knew that God was present and comforting me. My son and I, my surviving son, Jesse's older brother, we started a gratitude journal. And literally, it was just a wire-bound notebook. And each of us, before we went to bed at night together, we would write 3 things that we were grateful for. And I just found it the other day, and I was amazed at the things that we wrote down. They always had to be different. So I was really amazed at what we found to be grateful for, even in the worst time of our lives. And, we really relied on family. We had them surround us. And we had we were in a unique position too, because we had the world mourning with us. And I remember focusing on that, and these beautiful notes, mostly from kids, by the way, because kids have this sort of, they have this innate ability to empathize with other people and also feel compassion. So naturally they want to reach out. And the amazing thing is, when you reach out to somebody in need, that helps and heals you too. And something within them, they may not know that consciously, but I believe that they know that on a subconscious level. So I focused on that, and I focused on all that we had still that was good, and the fact that pain helps refine us, that I didn't want to be defined by the tragedy. I made a choice, that we were going to be refined by the fire of the tragedy, and we were going to move towards joy. And that started off my research as well. Of course, I went in the direction of love, which is running parallel with hope, which is why we're talking today. So very much similar. But Jesse left a message on our kitchen chalkboard, 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. And so I thought, wow, love. And of course, we know that that's so closely linked with hope. And also, one of the hope factors is love and connection and relationships. So, that's really how I moved through the worst time in my life. And do you want to share one of your something off the hope matrix that you think could help somebody listening that's struggling?
Yeah. And I just want to, take a moment to honor you for just your courage. Like, I think about what you went through, and obviously I can't imagine it. And, people, and I included, was like, gratitude. You want me to be grateful? Like, you
Yeah.
know, I lost my dad, and why am I going to be great? Like, I was just so angry, and
Yeah.
gratitude can feel so hard to reach
Yeah.
um, in those times. And it's intentional, and gratitude does change the brain. I mean, and I fought it for a long time, and I fought it to the harm of myself. I was hurting no one else other than myself in my own recovery. And it's not easy to hope, and it's not easy to hope in some of the hardest circumstances, and everyone has their own, and some little, some
If it were
massive. It doesn't
easy,
have to be.
if it were easy,
What's
everybody,
that?
if it were easy, everybody would do it,
I
right?
know.
But it's the best way to live.
Exactly. Yeah. And thanks to Dr. Amen, neuroplasticity, we can rewire our brain, and so many leaders in the space, but that are teaching us, that are studying the brain and learning ways. But so what you talk about is so important. And so, I developed the SHINE framework because I learned around young kids. I studied it all over the world. I published research in different countries and I was able to show that hope is a universal construct, can be easily understood in different cultures and contexts. So Esperanza in Spanish, and so I then created the framework and the company around it, because I couldn't get people to fund really prevention work 15 years ago. They thought, teach hope, what? That's like, why would we spend money on that? And I thought, why wouldn't you? Like, this is so important. And so SHINE is the mnemonic we came up with. Those stress skills, how we identify and manage our stress response, our sadness, anger, fear. So, you talked about prayer. Prayer is an incredible intervention for our stress response when we're triggered by things. If we can train ourselves to pray or to speak to a higher power or whatever that is, instead of reacting, it takes 90 seconds for us to get through that moment. So think of a longer prayer, it can be a great intervention. So we're kind of like merging the science and spiritual practices. Happiness habits, so how we get our happy hormones in healthy ways versus unhealthy ways, our dopamine or serotonin. Like, we get it from violence. Like, did you know that? Do kids know that? Do kids know they're trying to solve their problem of pain by becoming violent because it gives their body a hit? It's just not healthy. Same with addictive substances, smoking, drinking, all of those things give us our happy hormones, but they're not healthy for us. Mm-hmm. So how can we start making better decisions for ourselves? So that's the H. We teach inspired action. So, if you don't know how to set a goal, how do you get out of helplessness and into action? What are SMART goals? Like, what are different ways? So that's the I in inspired in the SHINE. And then nourishing networks, how we cultivate healthy bidirectional networks. They're so important in our programs for youth. We make sure everyone can identify one trusted adult, every youth in their life. And we encourage teachers to be that for that child if they don't have one. And the E is eliminating challenges. So how do we stop those negative thinking patterns, behaviors, beliefs that our brain just does, really unconsciously? And how do we make it conscious and then start using interventions to be more proactive about it? So it's really an education-based approach to hope. And that's kind of how we move towards a better future instead of moving towards our hopelessness. I'll say the one thing we're doing for this International Day of Hope campaign, we're talking about sunflowers. Jay Shetty has this amazing sunflower video. I'm going to be sharing it in a post in a bit. Sunflowers this is the sunflower theory, right? Sunflowers follow the sun during the day. And we chose the sunflower as the International Day of Hope because they look like most human-like. And I have my sunflower dress on by Calvin Klein. No, I'm kidding. I mean, it is, but sunflowers follow the sun, and then yeah, right, Scarlett. So, and then when darkness comes or when clouds come, they turn and follow and get support from each other. And it's so important. We don't do that naturally. Like, I didn't do that, but we need that. We all need that. We need support from each other in our darkness, in our dark times. And we have an online support, anxiety and depression support group on iFred. So we have over 12,000 members on that. We encourage people to reach out to people to get support. So our campaign this year is Be the Sunflower. Like, how can you be the sunflower for someone else? And who's being the sunflower for you? We want people to tag and share stories of being the sunflower, because that is how we create a better future. And like, Scarlett, you're my sunflower. You're one of my best and brightest sunflowers, and helped me through some really challenging times on this journey of hope. It's not been easy to help this vision become a reality, that everyone does know what hopelessness is, and everyone does know how to get to hope. And on the hard days, you're there for me, and you help me. I get sustenance from that relationship, and it helps me then get myself back together and get out to the world and start teaching this. So that's the message. Like, and if you don't feel like anyone's a sunflower for you, I encourage you that be the sunflower for other people. Go and teach a lesson in your community. It's on the International Day, but we have a 20-minute lesson. Anyone can learn it anywhere. Like, go and teach someone else about hope. Say something encouraging to someone else, that they're not alone. Like, we must feel alone, but how we get out of that aloneness, and how I got out of my hopelessness, was like teaching other people. It's not about me, it's about giving to other people. And then because that sustains me, that keeps me going. So be the sunflower for other people, be the sunflower, share who's the sunflower to you, to honor and recognize those people. And let's ensure we all have sunflowers in our lives.
So that's why when we got on, you called me your sunflower. And I absolutely love that image that you have. And think about this, those people who are listening, do you have somebody when the night comes, or when things get dark, when you, as we all do, suffer, do you have somebody that you can turn to, that will turn to you? I love that image of being the sunflower during the day, but then when it turns to night, they turn towards each other. Do you have somebody that you can turn towards and that will turn towards you? Really important. And even if things are going well right now, foster and cultivate those relationships, just like you would a sunflower in a garden. So important. Put time and effort into them so that they'll be there when you need them. So important, and Catherine, you are that for me as well. How many times have I called you and, I'm upset, I need to talk, I need to, and you're always there, and always, a great listener, and with some really good advice. And I just appreciate our friendship. Wow. Like I thought when I got up this morning, how blessed that I get to do this morning. It's such an important message on such a glorious day. It's Sunday. It's an absolutely beautiful day, but it's the International Day of Hope. And if you didn't know, you listener, if you didn't know how important hope is, I suggest you get Catherine's book. It is, you're going to talk about it in a second. It's phenomenal. And it shares her personal story. I mean, this is really near and dear to her heart, but she also knows, like, she's not just a clinical expert that studied it on paper. She's lived it, and she lives it every single day. She knows what she's talking about. And can you tell them a little bit about your book?
Sure thing. It's called The Biggest Little Book About Hope. And I will say, maybe not a clinic. I'm not a doctor, so I don't have a PhD.
I didn't say that. I said that, there are clinicians out there, and they study this, but I'm saying you are a lived experience expert. Plus you've done research, you've been published, but I'm just saying, you live it every day, just like I live the love movement, every day.
I know. Yeah, we know all of the greatest experts' theories and how we've evolved those theories and stuff. So it's been a fascinating journey. It's called The Biggest Little Book About Hope. I'm working on 2 other books right now that I'm very excited about. But The Biggest Little Book About Hope really shares my personal journey to get to hope. I'm excited to share more in my next 2 books about really what I have learned about hopelessness and how we operationalize hope globally, because it's so important. But the biggest little book about hope is my current book and my story. And I want you to look at the International Day of Hope, become a partner, download our toolkit. We have a toolkit. Learn how to share the Be the Sunflower campaign. So important to me that we all feel like we're sunflowers. And I will say, sometimes Scarlett's not available. And it's, Scarlett's busy. I'm busy. Sometimes she can't pick up the phone. And if I'm dependent on Scarlett for being there when I need her, that will drive me further into my despair and helplessness. So I think it's really important that we recognize sometimes 800 numbers don't work. Sometimes people can't be there for us, which is why it's important that we also know how to cultivate our own hope. And a connection to something greater than ourselves has been an important part of me, and God has been an important part. But whatever that is for you, it's important to stay still and not to become dependent on something external for your own hope, because that can inadvertently drive hopelessness. So, whether it's an exercise, gratitude, something you can do to build hope within yourself when other people aren't around to support you. So really important. But yeah, be the sunflower for yourself, for other. Look at our International Day of Hope. It's the most important thing for me. We have a single 20-minute lesson that's free. You can be an International Day of Hope champion at no cost. It's a 20-minute, sharing how we get to hope, what hopelessness is, how we get to hope. You get a certificate you can put on LinkedIn or share on social media. Anyone can be a champion. It is in English, so that is, but as we grow this movement, we'll grow and expand all of our programs. Again, my dream is that everyone knows how to be hopeful and navigate their hopelessness. So yeah, join the movement. Share your sunflower. Be the sunflower for yourself. Be the sunflower for someone else. Share how someone else is the sunflower for you. And hope is, it's not easy, yet it's always possible to start moving back towards it. So thank you so much for joining us, for listening in today. And do something wonderful. I'm going to church. I've been working nonstop, and today I did meditation and prayer, and I'm here with Scarlett. I'm going to do some social media stuff, go to church, spend time with my mom, and just have a wonderful day. And a special Paul, hi Paul, around hope. So I'm grateful to be here, and grateful to be talking to one of my brightest sunflowers. So Thank you, Scarlett.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks so much for all your work in putting this together and all the work you've done in Hope. Tireless. Just the world thanks you.
Thank you. Love you all. And you all are my sunflowers too. So thanks for listening in and helping us this dream become a reality. Take care. Bye, everyone.